The emissaries of the celestial hierarchy arrived on Earth in vessels that defied human comprehension. Their ships, smooth and featureless, shimmered like liquid metal against the sky, untouched by wind or gravity. They did not land so much as appear. Hovering above the United Nations headquarters in New Geneva, their very presence an unspoken declaration of authority. World leaders gathered in hushed anticipation, sitting stiffly in a circular hall, their eyes darting between one another as the emissaries materialized at the center of the chamber. They were tall, humanoid in shape, but unnervingly still, their luminous silver robes shifting without movement, their faces obscured by the glow of their forms. The tallest of them, whose voice resonated not in the air, but within the minds of all present, spoke first. Humanity has reached the threshold. Your species now stands at the precipice of greater understanding. The hierarchy has observed your kind, and its infinite wisdom has determined that you are to join the great order of the galaxy. The room erupted into murmurs. There had been theories, speculations of extraterrestrial life, of secret governments hiding knowledge, but this moment, the official contact, confirmed everything and more. The president of EarthGov, Alexander Wren, a man known for his composure, leaned forward, carefully selecting his words. You honor us. Humanity has long dreamed of reaching beyond the confines of our world. If we're to be part of this order, what is required of us? The emissary's radiance seemed to flicker. The galaxy is built upon equilibrium. Progress is permitted, but at a controlled pace. Unchecked advancement leads to chaos, destruction. To integrate, you must submit to the accord of measured growth. Your technological development will proceed only under the hierarchy's guidance. Your scientific endeavors will be monitored. You will be uplifted when the time is right. A silence stretched across the chamber. And if we refuse? Asked Chancellor Amir Patel of the Pan-Asian Confederacy, his voice cautious. For the first time, the emissary moved, tilting its head, or what could be assumed was its head, as though considering the question. You will not refuse. The response was final, unquestionable. It was not a threat. It was a statement of fact. The meeting lasted for hours, yet there was no room for negotiation. The hierarchy had determined humanity's place, and that place was one of slow, guided advancement. Many in the chamber accepted this without question. After all, was this not still a victory? To be acknowledged, to be integrated into a cosmic order greater than themselves? Others were hesitant, but reluctant to challenge a civilization whose power was so absolute. And so, Earth signed the accord. The first century under the accord passed with an air of quiet optimism. The hierarchy's representatives provided limited assistance. Energy solutions, medical advancements, planetary stabilization methods. They kept humanity alive, ensured it would thrive within strict boundaries. Wars became a thing of the past, as there was no longer a reason to fight for resources. Famine ended. Disease was minimized. But progress, true, independent progress, stagnated. Human scientists would formulate theories of breakthrough technologies, only for those theories to be dismissed. Devices capable of quantum computation were scrapped before they could be built. Spacefaring vessels, once thought to be the key to interstellar expansion, were regulated to short-distance travel within designated zones. The stars, though close, remained unreachable. Centuries passed. Humanity built cities on Mars, spread to Europa, Ganymede, Titan, but never beyond. The hierarchy forbade it. Their explanation was always the same: patience. In time, you will be ready. Dissent began to grow, whispered in hidden corners of academia, in underground networks of scholars and engineers. Some began to believe that the hierarchy was not guiding humanity, but imprisoning it. The idea was dangerous. Questioning the celestial hierarchy was tantamount to heresy, and those who voiced such concerns too openly often disappeared, their work erased, their names forgotten. By the 6th century, the frustration had turned to anger. when a team of researchers on Luna independently developed a method for artificial gravity, something that should have revolutionized space travel. The hierarchy intervened within hours. The facility was shut down, its data purged. The lead scientists were taken, their fates unknown. Then, humanity began to notice something even more unsettling. There were species who had been part of the hierarchy for thousands of years, races far older than humans, some with histories dating back to the dawn of interstellar civilization. And yet, they too remained stagnant. There were no civilizations that had been uplifted to the level of the hierarchy itself. There were no stories of species reaching the Council's level of power. It was as if no one was ever meant to reach that point. The realization spread like wildfire. At first, Earth's leaders hesitated. For centuries, they had believed the promises, held on to the idea that patience would be rewarded. Now they saw the truth. The hierarchy had no intention of ever allowing them to progress. They had lied. A summit was called, a desperate attempt to demand answers. Humanity's representatives sent a formal request to the hierarchy, asking for clarification on when they would be allowed to take the next step, when they would finally be considered equals. The response came within a day. It was neither diplomatic nor apologetic. It was a single statement broadcast across every human colony, transmitted directly into the minds of all who listened. You were never meant to advance. The weight of those words crushed centuries of belief in an instant. The illusion shattered. The rage that followed was unlike anything humanity had ever known. For the first time, they ignored the rules. In the underground labs of Europa, in the hidden research stations of the asteroid belt, in the secret depths of Earth itself, scientists resumed their work. Engineers defied the bans, rediscovering forbidden technology. A great, silent revolution began, fueled not by conquest, but by a singular, undeniable truth. Humanity would not be caged. The silence after the hierarchy's declaration did not last. It began as a murmur in the dark corners of human society, whispered conversations in secure networks, encoded messages sent through hidden channels. The words were simple, but carried the weight of an entire species' resolve. We will not be stopped. For centuries, humanity had played by the rules, had accepted the chains placed upon them in the hope that obedience would be rewarded. But now they understood the truth. The hierarchy never intended to uplift them, only to contain them. For the first time, defiance took root. Earth's leaders convened in the most secretive meeting in recorded history. No official transcripts existed. There were no formal declarations, no recorded votes. In a hidden chamber beneath the Martian capital of Eos Prime, the most powerful individuals in human space gathered, not as politicians, not as figureheads, but as a desperate species on the edge of extinction. President Alexander Wren, his hair now gray with age, sat at the head of the table. His voice was calm, but carried an unmistakable edge. We cannot afford to hesitate. The hierarchy has made their position clear. They will keep us beneath them forever. A dozen voices murmured their agreement. Others remained silent, uneasy. Admiral Celine Voren of the Terran Defense Fleet leaned forward, her cybernetic eyes scanning the faces before her. If we do this, we make enemies of the most powerful force in the galaxy. Are we prepared for that? General Malik Torin of the Martian Security Council scoffed. They were never our allies to begin with. They've held us back for centuries. This isn't rebellion. This is survival. No one disagreed. And so, in that clandestine meeting, Project Aegis was born, a secret initiative to accelerate human development beyond the limits imposed by the hierarchy. The first steps were cautious. Entire research divisions were moved underground, deep into the ice of Europa, beneath the sulfuric haze of Venus, in the labyrinthine caverns of Mars. The hierarchy's enforcers, watchful, ever-present, could not suspect a thing. Scientific minds that had spent centuries working within strict regulations were suddenly given freedom they had never known. Theories once dismissed as too ambitious were now encouraged. Suppressed knowledge was reconstructed from memory, reverse-engineered from the scraps of hierarchy technology humanity had managed to acquire. The first true breakthrough came within months. A team of physicists on Europa cracked a long-suppressed problem in faster-than-light travel. The hierarchy had long claimed that humanity's method of space travel, the slow and tedious Alcubierre drive, was the only viable form of FTL. But their claims were lies. The researchers discovered that the hierarchy's own ships did not use Alcubierre technology at all. Their method was something entirely different, something hidden from humanity. Through forbidden experimentation, the team unlocked the principles of phase slip drive, an instantaneous travel method far superior to anything humanity had known. The implications were staggering. If the hierarchy had lied about this, what else had they hidden? With the ability to move undetected, humanity's next step was warships. Publicly, the Terran defense fleet remained weak, outdated, a collection of slow, bulky vessels meant only for defense. The hierarchy saw them as harmless. But beneath the surface, hidden beyond the watchful eyes of the Council, the ghost fleets were built. These were not the lumbering behemoths of old. They were sleek, undetectable, equipped with technology that no human ship had ever possessed. Advanced AI-controlled targeting systems, adaptive hull plating, energy weapons reverse-engineered from stolen hierarchy designs. Each vessel was a masterpiece of ingenuity, and they were built in absolute secrecy. Entire shipyards were concealed beneath the frozen oceans of Europa and Titan. Production facilities on rogue asteroid colonies operated in total silence, their work hidden beneath electromagnetic distortions. The fleet was invisible to all but those who needed to know. And still, the hierarchy suspected nothing. They believed humanity was obedient. They had no idea what was coming. It was on the fringes of the Sol system, in the shadow of Neptune's largest moon, that the first test of humanity's defiance took place. A hierarchy patrol vessel, a sleek, silver obelisk of impossible design, had entered the system. It was a routine check, one of the many periodic visits the hierarchy conducted to ensure compliance. But this time, humanity was ready. The experimental warship Erebus, piloted by a crew of the best minds Project Aegis, had to engage the patrol vessel with technology the hierarchy had never seen. Phase slip drive allowed them to strike and vanish, their energy weapons bypassing the hierarchy's shields entirely. The battle lasted less than 2 minutes. The patrol vessel never had a chance. And for the first time in history, a hierarchy ship was destroyed by human hands. No signals were sent. No records were left behind. The hierarchy would assume the vessel had suffered a malfunction, that it had been lost to the void. For now, humanity remained in the shadows. But that would not last forever. The message had been sent, even if the hierarchy did not yet realize it. Humanity was no longer waiting. Back on Earth, in the heart of the underground complex that housed Project Aegis, President Rin stood before the gathered scientists, engineers, and military strategists. We have taken our first step, but we must not be arrogant. His voice was firm, unwavering. The hierarchy will not remain blind forever. When they discover what we have done, they will come for us. The room remained silent, listening. But they have made one critical mistake. Ren's eyes burned with determination. They believe they're gods. They believe we are nothing more than children to be contained. He paused, letting the weight of his next words settle over the crowd. They have never seen what humanity is capable of when we refuse to be caged. A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembly. Admiral Vorin stood, her cybernetic eye glowing in the dim light. "When they come for us," she said, voice like steel, "they won't be ready." And in the depths of human-controlled space, beneath layers of deception and secrecy, the greatest minds of the species continued their work. For the first time in history, humanity was not simply advancing. They were preparing for war. For centuries, humanity had bowed. Now, they sharpened their knives. The destruction of the hierarchy patrol vessel had been a test, a successful one. But those involved in Project Aegis knew the hierarchy would eventually notice its absence. The first real confrontation was inevitable. And so, the Ghost fleets expanded. Dozens of warships were constructed in hidden shipyards, each one an evolution of the last. Erebus had been an experiment, but her successors, the Nemesis-class stealth destroyers, were designed for war. They were fast, undetectable, and, most importantly, equipped with weapons the hierarchy had never encountered. Still, humanity remained in the shadows. The next strike had to be precise. The target was Outpost Xiphos, a small but vital hierarchy monitoring station situated just beyond the Kuiper Belt. It was the hierarchy's eye on the Sol system, manned by a minimal crew, but equipped with a communications relay capable of transmitting real-time data across the galaxy. If the hierarchy discovered human activity beyond their restrictions, if they learned of the Ghost fleets and the forbidden advancements, the full weight of their forces would descend upon humanity. The outpost had to be silenced. It was time to move. The assault force consisted of 3 Nemesis-class destroyers, Nyx, Phobos, and Deimos. They emerged from the darkness of space like ghosts, their phase-slip drives delivering them within striking distance of the outpost before its sensors could detect them. Inside Xiphos, the alien crew barely had time to react before the first volley hit. The outpost's shields flickered, energy fields designed to repel conventional weapons, but useless against humanity's new disruptor cannons. The impact tore through the station's outer defenses, sending debris spiraling into the void. Emergency sirens blared. Hierarchy personnel scrambled to return fire. But Xiphos was not a war station. It was an observation post, a place designed for surveillance, not battle. Within moments, the first of its defensive turrets was reduced to molten slag. The station's commander, a Zalari overseer named Vorthenkel, barely managed to activate the distress signal before the Nyx fired a concentrated energy lance through the outpost's power core. The resulting explosion consumed half the station. The distress signal had been cut off mid-transmission. Xiphos was gone. The 3 Nemesis-class destroyers faded back into the void, leaving nothing but silence in their wake. The hierarchy had just lost one of their own stations, and for the first time, humanity had drawn blood. Days passed, then weeks. For a time, there was nothing. Project Aegis operatives monitored all intercepted transmissions, waiting for the inevitable response. But the hierarchy remained silent. At first, some within the secret council of EarthGov believed they had gotten away with it, that the destruction of Xiphos had been assumed to be a tragic accident. But deep in the cold void beyond the Sol system, something moved. Then came the first sign. A hierarchy enforcement fleet entered the system. 12 ships, not mere patrol vessels, but warships, massive dreadnoughts and cruisers, armed with the weapons of civilization that had ruled unchallenged for eons. For the first time in centuries, the hierarchy was sending a direct military presence into human space. This was not an investigation. This was retribution. Project Aegis had anticipated a response, but the sheer speed of the hierarchy's mobilization was alarming. The warships entered human space under the pretense of a routine compliance check, but it was clear to those watching that they were searching for something. Xiphos had gone dark. They suspected something, but they were not prepared for what they found. The hierarchy task force moved into orbit around Europa, where one of humanity's largest secret research bases was hidden beneath the ice. They began scanning, searching, interrogating officials. But the Ghost fleets had already moved into position. Admiral Celine Vorin, commanding from the bridge of the Nyx, gave the order. Fire. From a void, hidden ships decloaked. 14 Nemesis-class destroyers and 3 prototype dreadnoughts. The attack was precise, coordinated. The first wave of disruptor fire bypassed the shields of the hierarchy's leading cruiser, Thalzor, rupturing its primary reactor. The ship detonated in a blinding explosion, sending debris spiraling into Europa's thin atmosphere. The hierarchy fleet scrambled to respond, but their weapons systems were slow. They had always believed themselves to be untouchable, superior beyond question. They had never fought an enemy they couldn't predict. Humanity was unpredictable. One by one, hierarchy ships fell. The Nyx and her sister ships wove through enemy fire, exploiting weaknesses only now being discovered. Humanity had studied hierarchy technology for centuries, but the hierarchy had never been forced to study humanities. By the time the battle ended, only 2 hierarchy warships remained intact, damaged, crippled, forced into retreat. For the first time in history, a hierarchy war fleet had been defeated. The aftermath of the battle was not just a victory, it was a statement. Humanity had struck the first true blow against its oppressors. No longer were they a species waiting for permission to evolve. And as the hierarchy's surviving warships limped back to their space, humanity sent a single encrypted message to their High Council. You held us back. We learned anyway. Now we surpass you. The celestial hierarchy had spent millennia as the supreme power in the galaxy. But now, for the first time, they faced something they had never anticipated. A species that had evolved in the shadows. A species that refused to be contained. A species that had already surpassed them. And the hierarchy, for the first time in its ancient existence, was afraid. The war had begun. It was not declared in grand speeches, nor in public forums. No banners flew. No treaties were signed. It started in the void, in the places between the stars where no one was watching. The hierarchy had ruled for so long that they had never considered the possibility of true defiance. They had mistaken humanity's patience for obedience. Now, they faced something they could not predict, something they had never prepared for. The defeat at Europa sent shockwaves through the celestial hierarchy. Their warships, long thought to be the pinnacle of military might, had been outmaneuvered, outgunned, and outclassed by a species they had deemed primitive. The High Council convened in the luminous halls of Orvex Prime, their seat of power. 12 counselors, each representing a race that had long since been stagnated by the hierarchy's rule, gathered in uneasy silence. The air vibrated with psychic resonance, a silent communication between beings who had spoken in thoughts for millennia. Now came the first unspoken demand. How could they have advanced so quickly? Impossible. We have controlled their technology for 6 centuries. Yet they surpassed us. How? No one had an answer. Vorthenkel, the last surviving commander of the decimated fleet, knelt before the council. His injuries were severe. His species did not recover well from battle trauma, but the shame burned deeper than his wounds. They knew our weaknesses, he admitted, his voice trembling with disbelief. They struck before we could react. Their weapons bypassed our shields. Their ships moved faster than physics should allow. They fought with knowledge they should not have possessed. Silence. Then a single thought, cold and final, echoed across the chamber. They had been lying to us. It was the only explanation. Humanity had not simply developed advanced technology. They had been developing it in secret, right under the hierarchy's nose. The realization sent the council into a silent fury. For centuries, they had held humanity's progress in check, believing their will to be absolute. And yet, humanity had still surpassed them. If one species has done this, others may follow. That was the true fear, the reason for the hierarchy's iron grip. If humanity had broken free, then other civilizations, species long held in stagnation, might begin to question their place as well. The council could not allow that. And so, for the first time in history, the celestial hierarchy abandoned their facade of benevolent oversight. They would eradicate humanity before its defiance could spread. As the council deliberated, humanity was already moving forward. Project Aegis had proven that their technological superiority was not an anomaly. It was only the beginning. With each passing week, the advancements became more radical. The phase slip drive, once an experimental prototype, was now standard across the growing ghost fleets. Adaptive shields, which absorbed and redirected energy, rendered hierarchy weapons obsolete. Biological augmentation, once considered dangerous, was now widespread among human soldiers. Enhanced reflexes, cognitive acceleration, neural-linked combat systems. Humanity was no longer fighting with mere flesh and bone. They were evolving beyond the limitations of their biology. Even AI integration, once restricted by the hierarchy's edicts, was now embraced. Fully sentient constructs operated alongside human tacticians, analyzing strategies in real time, predicting enemy movements before they happened. This was not an arms race. This was an evolutionary leap. The hierarchy's first response was retaliation. They launched precision strikes on human colonies, believing they could cow the species back into submission. But each attack was met with failure. Where once human settlements had been defenseless, now they were fortified with planetary shields and automated counteroffensive systems. Ships that should have been easy prey turned on their attackers, tearing through hierarchy formations with brutal efficiency. The Council realized, too late, that they were fighting not a rebellion, but an ascension. Their empire had remained stagnant for so long that it had atrophied, and now other species began to notice. On the world of Valon, the Zalari, the very species of Commander Vorthenkel, began questioning the hierarchy's rule. If humans had found a way forward, why had they been held back for millennia? On Drethka Prime, an underground resistance movement stirred, whispering of forbidden technologies and stolen knowledge. The hierarchy had ruled with absolute authority for eons. Now, cracks were forming. The Council had always feared this moment, and their fears were becoming reality. In a hidden facility beneath the surface of Titan, humanity's greatest minds gathered for a singular purpose. The question was simple. What comes next? President Alexander Wren, weary but resolute, stood before the leaders of Project Aegis. His voice carried the weight of 6 centuries of repression, of frustration turned to fire. We are no longer fighting to prove ourselves. We are no longer fighting for our place in their order. He paused, letting the weight of his next words settle in the chamber. We are fighting to replace them. The room was silent. No one doubted the truth in his words. The hierarchy had made themselves obsolete. Humanity had already surpassed them in every way that mattered. The next step was inevitable. A final, decisive strike. One that would shatter the old order forever. In the depths of the void, hidden from the eyes of the hierarchy, the next generation of warships was being constructed. Not just warships, titans, planet-cracking behemoths, vessels equipped with reality disruptors, capable of rewriting the very fabric of physics. Weapons that the hierarchy could not comprehend, much less defend against. But even these were not the end goal. Humanity's greatest project, the culmination of all their stolen knowledge, was something far greater. A singularity, a post-biological ascension, a way to evolve beyond mere physical existence, to step into the unknown, unbound by the constraints of flesh or the limits of technology, to become something new, something the hierarchy could never hope to control. As the first of the Titan-class warships left their hidden shipyards, a single message was broadcast across the galaxy. Not in submission, not in negotiation, but in declaration. The hierarchy is obsolete. The future belongs to those who dare to create it. And at the heart of the hierarchy's empire, in the council chambers of Orvex Prime, the rulers of the old order finally understood the truth. They were no longer gods. They were no longer necessary. And the species they had tried to hold back, they had surpassed them. The celestial hierarchy had ruled for millennia, an unshakable force that dictated the progress of all species beneath it. They had assumed that their control was eternal, that their word was law. They were wrong. Humanity had broken the chains, and now the hierarchy was beginning to unravel. The first signs of collapse were subtle. The bureaucratic machine of the hierarchy had never moved quickly, its systems bloated by eons of complacency. But after the defeat at Europa, cracks began to form. Entire sectors fell into disarray. For the first time in recorded history, hierarchy governors found themselves unable to issue orders without question. On occupied worlds, whispers of rebellion grew into open defiance. The Drethka revolt began when a single colony refused to comply with an imposed production quota. When the hierarchy sent enforcers, the Drethkan militia long believed to be an irrelevant force, revealed that they had acquired human technology. Within days, an entire hierarchy garrison had been annihilated. It was only the beginning. On Valon, the Zalari homeworld, the ruling caste, who had served the hierarchy as loyal overseers, began to question their allegiance. They had been told that the hierarchy protected them, that without their guidance, chaos would reign. But the humans had defeated them, and the universe had not collapsed. For the first time in thousands of years, they wondered, what if we have been deceived? Doubt spread like wildfire. Desperation gripped the hierarchy's ruling council. Their forces had been humiliated. Their hold over their subject species was weakening. Their authority was being questioned. They needed to restore order. A grand counteroffensive was planned, a strike meant to crush humanity and remind the galaxy who ruled it. The Ascendant Armada, the largest hierarchy fleet ever assembled, was dispatched toward Sol. It carried thousands of warships, each one an instrument of destruction meant to burn humanity's defiance to the ground. They believed victory was inevitable. They were wrong. Humanity had anticipated this move. By the time the hierarchy fleet entered the outer system, they found themselves walking into a trap. The ghost fleets were waiting. The Battle of Orion's Edge would go down in history as the moment the hierarchy lost control of the war. Humanity's fleet did not engage conventionally. They struck from phase-slip anomalies, appearing inside hierarchy formations before their ships could react. Reality disruptors tore through enemy warships, bypassing shields and annihilating them at a molecular level. AI-directed swarms of autonomous fighters overwhelmed hierarchy defenses, adapting in real time to their countermeasures. And then came the Titan-class warships. The Leviathan, humanity's first dreadnought of unprecedented scale, fired a single shot, one that shattered the hierarchy's flagship, Varric Thal, in an instant. Panic spread through the enemy ranks. Within 12 hours, the greatest fleet in hierarchy history was annihilated. It was over. Humanity had not only survived, they had emerged as the superior force. And the hierarchy knew it. Word of the defeat spread across the empire. The illusion of hierarchy supremacy had been shattered. Governors on distant worlds began to abandon their posts. Military forces that had once enforced the councils were defected or went rogue. For the first time in millennia, the hierarchy was no longer feared. On Kavteruin, one of the hierarchy's oldest vassal races openly declared independence. Hierarchy forces attempted to quell the uprising. They failed. The Kavteruin, using reverse-engineered human technology, obliterated an entire occupation fleet. The empire began to collapse. Entire species, once too afraid to resist, rose up. Civil war erupted across dozens of worlds. The hierarchy had lost control. With their fleets in ruins and their dominion crumbling, the hierarchy's ruling council faced an inevitable truth. They were obsolete. The strongest among them, Counselor Vexus Array, proposed one final, desperate measure: the Oblivion Protocol, a doomsday contingency designed to erase humanity from existence. A weapon of cataclysmic scale, hidden deep within the hierarchy's core worlds. If activated, it would destabilize the very fabric of space in human-occupied territories, collapsing entire solar systems into nothingness. It was genocide. The proposal divided the council. Some saw it as necessary. Others saw it as madness. And then, the coup. Counselor Ethiskor, who had long questioned the hierarchy's refusal to change, led a faction of dissenters. In a single night, the ruling council was overthrown. Vexus Array was executed. The Oblivion Protocol was erased. The hierarchy, as it had existed for eons, was dead. With the hierarchy's fall, humanity stood on the precipice of total victory. They had surpassed their oppressors. They had dismantled the old order. But the question remained, what next? There were those who called for conquest, to establish humanity as the new rulers of the galaxy, to take the hierarchy's place. Others argued for something greater. President Alexander Wren stood before a council of humanity's finest minds, the weight of the future pressing upon him. We did not fight for control. We fought for freedom. If we take their place, we become them. We must be better. And so humanity made a choice. Not to rule, but to guide. To share what they had learned. To uplift the species the hierarchy had held back. To burn the old order to ash and forge something new. And so, the final transmission was sent. A message to the galaxy. Advance as you will. No one will hold you back again. The celestial hierarchy was gone. The age of control was over. And the age of freedom had begun. The celestial hierarchy had ruled for millennia. It had shaped the course of civilizations, determined which species would rise and which would remain stagnant. It had declared itself the custodian of balance, the guardian of progress. And now it was dying, not with a final, decisive battle, not with a climactic last stand, but with fracture, with betrayal, with the inevitable collapse of an empire that had outlived its purpose. The hierarchy had built its dominion on the illusion of invincibility. It had relied on fear, on the unshakable belief that resistance was futile. But with each battle lost, with each world that rose up, that illusion shattered. And when the illusion fell, so did their power. Orvex Prime, the ancient homeworld of the celestial hierarchy, had stood as a beacon of order for countless millennia. From its vast crystalline spires, the ruling council had dictated the fate of lesser species, passing decrees that shaped the entire galaxy. Now those spires burned. The rebellion had reached, even here, to the heart of the old empire. The very species the hierarchy had ruled over for ages, the Zalari, the Drethkins, the Kovturuan, now stormed the capital in open revolt. For the first time in history, the hierarchy's enforcers turned their weapons on their own people. The civil war that had started in the outer systems now raged in the core. The council chambers, once places of silent deliberation, became war zones. Vessels once used to enforce compliance fled as the flames consumed the capital. And in the heart of the chaos, humanity watched, not as conquerors, but as the inevitable force of progress that could not be stopped. As the revolution raged across hierarchy space, a small fleet of Titan-class warships emerged from the void, not to destroy, but to end it. Aboard the Leviathan, President Alexander Wren and Admiral Celine Vorin prepared for what would be the last negotiation of the war. The surviving members of the hierarchy's ruling council, those who had not already been overthrown or executed by their own people, had no choice but to accept the meeting. In a ruined citadel, surrounded by the remnants of their once mighty empire, the counselors stood before humanity's emissaries. They were no longer gods. They were defeated rulers standing at the edge of extinction. "You have won," one of them admitted, their voice carrying the weight of a fallen empire. "We see that now. But what will you do? Will you claim what we have built? Will you replace us?" Ren's expression was unreadable. "No." The answer stunned them. "We never fought to rule. We fought to end your rule." The counselors, beaten and desperate, struggled to understand. Humanity had every advantage now. Their fleets were stronger. Their technology was superior. They could crush the remnants of the hierarchy and take the empire for themselves. But they would not, because to replace the old order was to become it. And humanity had not fought to dominate. They had fought to liberate. Not all in the hierarchy accepted defeat. Some, like the former warlord Vex's Array, still believed in the old ways. Hidden in a fortress on the remote world of Zarzun, the last loyalist faction prepared a final act of vengeance. They activated the hierarchy's last, most desperate weapon, the Cataclysm Array. A relic of the Empire's oldest days, the Array was a device capable of unraveling the fabric of space itself, creating a chain reaction that would collapse entire star systems into black holes. If the hierarchy could not rule, they would erase everything. The signal was sent. The countdown began. And then, silence. Before the weapon could fire, the Ghost Fleet struck. Elite infiltration teams, enhanced with cybernetic augmentation and AI-assisted reflexes, descended on Zarzun. They moved too fast for the defenders to react. The fortress was breached. The command center was taken. And in the final moments, before Vexus Array could activate the sequence, Admiral Celine Vorn herself put a bullet through his skull. The war was over, and the last shadow of the old hierarchy died with him. With the last remnants of resistance crushed, the celestial hierarchy ceased to exist. But humanity did not declare victory with parades or celebrations. They did not claim the ruins of the old empire for themselves. Instead, they did something no conqueror had ever done before. They gave the galaxy back to itself. The shattered species that had once been subjugated were given autonomy. Technology that had been hoarded for centuries was shared freely. The age of control had ended. A new council was formed, not to rule, but to facilitate cooperation among all species. Not a government, but a forum where civilizations could advance on their own terms. Humanity's message to the galaxy was clear. Advance as you will. No one will hold you back again. And yet, humanity itself was not unchanged. They had surpassed the hierarchy in technology, in war, in knowledge. But now they faced one last decision. For centuries, they had studied the limits of existence. They had discovered technologies the hierarchy had feared to explore. They had pierced the boundary between flesh and machine, between thought and reality. And now, many among them sought the next step, the final ascension, to transcend biology itself, to exist as something beyond mortal limitations. And so, the greatest minds of the species, the pioneers of the new age, embarked on a final journey. Not to conquer, not to rule, but to become something new. A species that had once been shackled had now risen beyond even its own creators. And in the vast, endless expanse of the universe, humanity disappeared, not in death, but in evolution. They left behind a free galaxy and a single, final message. We were never meant to be controlled. We were meant to evolve. And so we have. Then they were gone, and the age of the celestial hierarchy became nothing more than a memory. The celestial hierarchy was gone. For the first time in known history, the galaxy was free. Worlds that had lived under the weight of oppression, their progress halted, their potential smothered, now stood on the precipice of something they had never known: choice. No longer were they bound by the decrees of unseen rulers. No longer were they forced to stagnate beneath the illusion of balance. They could advance as they wished. And at the heart of it all, the species that had broken the cycle, the species that had defied the gods and won, was nowhere to be found. Humanity had moved beyond, but their legacy remained. In the ruins of the hierarchy's former capital on Orvex Prime, representatives of newly independent worlds gathered. They came not as subjugated vassals, not as subjects of an empire, but as equals. The Drethkins, once seen as little more than warriors without a cause, now stood at the forefront of galactic security, using their strength to protect rather than subjugate. The Zalari, long bound by the hierarchy's edicts of control, unlocked the knowledge they had been denied for millennia, propelling themselves into a scientific golden age. The Kavtaruan, who had once served as little more than laborers under the hierarchy's rule, now pioneered planetary engineering projects, reshaping their worlds into paradise-like ecosystems. It was an age of renaissance, of discovery, of unrestricted growth. But it was not without struggle. Without a singular authority to dictate order, the galaxy teetered on chaos. Some systems sought power for themselves, trying to fill the vacuum left by the hierarchy's fall. Old rivalries, once buried under oppression, resurfaced, and the question that lingered in every discussion, in every debate, was the same. What do we do without the hierarchy? In the past, there would have been a simple answer: a new empire, a new ruling order. But humanity had left another path. No one knew exactly who sent the first transmission. It came from deep within the void, a single encrypted signal sent to every world that had once lived under the hierarchy's rule. It contained no demands, no threats, no rulers, only an offer. A council, formed not to govern, but to guide. A collective of species, each responsible for their own progress, their own destinies, but united in cooperation, in mutual defense, in shared knowledge. It was called the Union of Free Worlds. Not a government, not an empire, a network, a coalition of those who chose to embrace their own evolution. It was an idea, one that could never have existed under the old order. And slowly, world by world, it took root. No species would ever again be held back. No civilization would ever be told, "You were never meant to advance." Those words had been buried with the hierarchy. Now, the only words that mattered were, "Advance as you will." Though their influence remained, humanity itself had vanished. They had chosen a path that no other species could follow, a path beyond flesh, beyond matter, beyond the constraints of existence as it had always been known. Some believed they had ascended, their consciousness no longer bound by the physical universe. Others theorized they had discovered a way to leave this reality entirely, stepping into a plane of existence that even the hierarchy had never conceived. A few skeptics believed they had simply gone into hiding, watching from the shadows, waiting to see what the galaxy would do without them. But in the end, it did not matter. They had left behind the tools for progress, not the chains of control. They had given the galaxy a future, not an empire. And that was enough. Decades after the fall of the hierarchy, a signal was discovered. It was buried deep within the archives of the Leviathan, the last known command ship of humanity's ghost fleets. A recording. The voice of President Alexander Wren, speaking one last time. We were never meant to remain in chains. We were never meant to be ruled. We were never meant to stop evolving. And so we have not. To those who come after us, know this. The future is yours. The mistakes of the past belong to those who refuse to change. But you are free. Advance as you will. No one will hold you back again. Then silence. And though the stars held no sign of them, the legacy of humanity remained. Not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as the species that had shattered the gods and set the universe free. The galaxy moved forward. The union of free worlds grew. New civilizations rose. Old ones transformed. Science, exploration, technology, all flourished without restriction. And though the hierarchy had once claimed to be the keepers of balance, the truth had been revealed. True balance was not in control. It was in freedom, in unlimited potential, in the right of every species, every mind, every world to decide its own fate. And so, in the end, the greatest empire in galactic history did not fall to war. It fell to progress, to evolution, to the one thing it could never control. And in its place, the universe began again.